my name is Jess, and this is part one of the Creative Creators video series talking about what an art crit could be. So, an art crit can be defined as a group of creatives taking turns to show and give feedback for each other's works. So, take for instance 5 people meeting up for a group crit. This person might be nominate themselves to go as the artist first. And as their artist, their job is to present their work. All these other 4 people will become the critter, where their job is to provide feedback that responds to what the artist needs. After this artist is completed, the next person nominates themselves as the artist, and all these other 4 people will become the critter. That keeps on happening until everyone in the group has had a chance to be the artist. So the artist essentially has 2 key roles. The first is to share about the work that they bring. And this can be a work that has been completed or something that's in progress. They could also choose to use the introduction card available inside the Creative Critters deck that has a little script at the back that can guide how they might choose to present their work. In this role, it's important to think about how much is beneficial to share versus to hide about the artwork you're presenting. So, for example, if you're bringing a painting and you want to know about people's first impression of that painting, might not be that beneficial to actually share too much about the concept behind the work because that might clouds people's judgment. But if you want to actually get feedback on the exhibition text describing that painting, then obviously you want to provide all the critters either a text document or read that document on the artwork's description so that they can provide critique to how you're conveying your painting. This also plays a role, for example, if as an artist, you're bringing a work that is still in its very abstract stage, where you don't have an actual physical object, then obviously you might have to consider what information does the critter need in order to be able to provide me with feedback that would be beneficial for what I'm looking for. So the second role is to make explicit the goals and what you're looking for by attending the critique session. So in the Creative Critters deck, we have several goal cards, 10 of these. And in each of these goal cards, you have a little short prompt of a goal. So this one says, to visualize the next steps I can take. So as an artist, you could choose between 1 to 3 of these goal cards and lay them out on the table so that when the critter is providing you with feedback, they can check in whether their feedback actually aligns with what you're looking for by attending the crit today. So that's the artist role. We're going to move on to the critter's role. So as a critter, it's important to always remember that your job is to meet the artist's need, not your own.
One way to do this is to check in with our intentions for the critique we are about to offer. As critters, our job is to provide critiques that benefit the artist rather than ourselves as critters. So a simple question you can ask yourself is, does this comment align to what the artist is looking for and can contribute to the development of their work? I say this because sometimes when I felt intimidated or nervous in a crit, maybe because there's other artists or curators that I really look up to in my group crit, I've noticed myself unintentionally providing critiques that serve my own rather than the artist's best interest. For example, something I've noticed happen often in crits I was a part of are moments where the critter begins to share a lot of references of artworks, galleries, and texts to the artist, which, upon hindsight, might not have really aligned to what the artist is looking for or the work they are presenting. I know when I've done this in the past, It has come from a place of wanting to show others the knowledge that I had, artists that I knew about, and my stance in a certain topic. And while it's important for us to bring our knowledge and our positions, perspectives as a critter, it's also really important to continue checking in and making sure that the purpose behind sharing them is to meet the artist's goals rather than to establish our identity or position. This process of checking in actually becomes really important, especially when a discussion in a crit gets pretty intense. Sometimes, we find ourselves critiquing an artwork that really resonates with our personal projects and interests. Lots of curious questions might start to bubble up for you that might be beneficial to know for your own practice. Note these questions down and ask them to the artist once their crit round is up. This allows you to reap one of the most juicy benefits of a crit session, which is to learn from other artists, whilst at the same time mitigating the potential of derailing the crit's focus from the artist's goals.
So this is the last part of the presentation where I'm going to share to you that as an artist in my experience, I personally find it most helpful to actually be asked questions in a group crit. And that's because it allows me to the space to reflect on the choices that I made, and that gives me the opportunity to make choices that might align even better to my intended purpose of creating an artwork. So here are just some ways that you might think about potentially asking questions to the artist. You might use the classic five W's and one H, like maybe asking, why did you choose to color the moon in red? Or if you have something that you want to suggest, you might consider, instead of saying that as a suggestion, phrasing it as a question. For example, instead of saying, you should name the work John, it would make a better title. You might ask, how did you come to decide that artwork's title? And that provides the artist again a chance to reflect on their decisions, which is a really powerful tool to allowing them to make more intentional choices in their art practice. So that's all I have to share with you in this first part. Thank you for listening.